everybody, it's Dave and Darren here. We're your two old bloggers, been doing this, commenting publicly on your Minnesota Vikings for over 2 decades apiece. Hello there, Raymond. How are you doing? And today we got 3 themes as usual. First one's going to be, don't worry, be happy. Because even after the Detroit debacle, there's hope. And this is all about hope, baby. There'll be plenty of time to dissect and get grumbly after the fact. But right now, it's about hope. So, hey, Peter. Hey, Jason. Then we're going to get into This Week in Vikings Land. And there are a few important news notes that happened this week that we're going to talk about. How often does a head coach get traded? I think it's probably more than you think. And then finally, we're going to preview the game. The Minnesota Vikings at the LA Rams in Phoenix, Arizona. That's right. All next on Two Old Bloggers. Let's rock. Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. Hey, buddy. We're here for another week. Wild card week. Gotta love it. And for the theme today, let's see, where is it? From Detroit disaster to playoff hope. It's going to be an interesting one. So,
it will.
How's things in the Great
We're
White
here
North?
to talk about it. Oh, it's been a tough week, Dave. I had to lick my wounds from Monday night, like a lot of us did. I lost a bet to a guy on my basketball team who's a Detroit fan, so I had to wear his Calvin Johnson jersey at work all day Tuesday. It was, yeah.
Oh.
But I've come out the other side and just ready to watch Monday night's game and the whole weekend of football, really, which is with the game going on right now. Which don't pay attention to it, folks. Stick to this channel and watch us talk about the Rams Vikings, because that's way more important than the Texans and the Chargers right now.
Yep. And speaking of wounds, how's the leg doing?
A little bit of progress, but pretty slow going. Didn't realize a calf strain, pulled calf, whatever the hell it was, it'd be swollen for a whole week. But anyway, got some physio going on coming up on Thursday. Hopefully that'll I'm able to walk a bit. So there is progress, just not as fast as I would like. And I've been kind of cranky because I can't do any of my normal routine exercise sporting activities.
Yeah, I bet. Bet the wife's ready to kick you out in the snow already.
Yeah, maybe so.
All right, let's get on to theme 1. Oop, wrong one. Don't worry, be happy.
Well, yeah, this comes off of I know none of us are feeling very good about what happened last Monday night in Detroit against Detroit. And when we did we were doing the post-game show after the Detroit debacle, as you called it, Dave, the mood was understandably amongst the people there, ourselves and the folks that joined in to listen to us and comment. It was, I think, understandably sour. A lot of, I think, a lot of disgust shown on there. Some, a feeling of regret, hopelessness, a little bit of hope there too from some folks. But overall, people weren't very happy, and a lot of them seemed to be down and out on Sam Darnold end the Viking season after that loss. Like, let's forget about it. This season's going to end the same way all the Viking seasons have ended in previous seasons. No point in even bothering to put any hope on this team. And Dave, I just can't get on board with that. And it brings back, and you and I are going to date ourselves here pretty badly, but that brought to me that 80s novelty hit by Bobby McFerrin, "Don't Worry, Be Happy," a tune I never liked, but you couldn't get away without, you couldn't possibly escape from hearing it if you listened to the radio at all back in the mid 80s. And
the opening whistling is absolutely outstanding.
Oh yeah, for sure. There are some parts there that I can listen to, but just not the whole thing. But anyway, it's a good message to have. And I've been trying to have that, and have been keeping that attitude this week after what happened in Detroit, trying to, and because I think, the Vikings, despite what happened in Detroit on Monday night, we have a very good team. All is not lost. There is hope, and there's reasons to be hopeful. And there's a couple of reasons why I think that, and a couple of reasons why I am trying to not worry and be happy heading into Monday night's game against the Los Angeles Rams. The first one is, was listening to Wes Phillips in his press conference earlier in the week after the loss. I think that was on Tuesday. He met with reporters, and of course he got asked right away, Wes, what's your take on why things went so badly for the Vikings offense against Detroit, and against a Detroit defense, which was down multiple starters due to injuries. And he said, and I think this is fair and true, was that in a game like that, the quarterback, because of the way we look at quarterbacks and how important they are to NFL offenses, the quarterback's always going to get the big part of the blame if an offense doesn't perform well in a game. But he said, in most of the time, almost all of the time, that there's a lot of blame to go around. And that was true in this game. Yes, Sam Darnold played horrible. Justin Jefferson also played very poorly. Jordan Addison also played very poorly. TJ Hawkinson played poorly. The left side of the Vikings offensive line in particular, Cam Robinson, the left tackle, and Blake Brandel, the left guard, played poorly. And I don't think this was the finest hour for the other three offensive linemen either. Not so much Brian O'Neill. I think he was pretty steady, but Bradbury, Reisner, they had their issues as well. Aaron Jones was really the only one, our starting running back was the only one I felt that held up his end of the bargain and played at least solidly. So, and if you look at Pro Football Focus's grades for that game, it's not just the eye test that those guys look bad, but PFF gave everybody that I just mentioned, other than Aaron Jones, they gave them a low 50s or worse grade for that game, which is very bad. So, hey, if TJ Hawkinson plays poorly, Justin Jefferson plays poorly, Sam Darnold plays poorly, Jordan Addison plays poorly, and a lot of our offensive line play poorly, guess what? The Vikings are not going to win that game. And so it wasn't all on Sam Darnold. Yes, he missed some open receivers that could have made a big difference, particularly in the red zone. We know that, Dave. You talked about that with Tyler and on other shows this week, who will be kings of the north, the whole shebang. But it just wasn't solely on Darnold as poorly as he played. And why is, after seeing that and witnessing that, why am I hopeful going into Monday's game? Well, Dave, the reason is because I think there's a zero chance that all of those guys play that poorly 2 weeks in a row. There's no, maybe somebody will. Blake Brandel probably would be the one that I would say would be most likely to repeat that performance, because he's had several of those the past few weeks. But I don't think TJ Hawkins is going to play like that poorly and be bottled up like he was, or Jefferson or Addison, and Darnold's going to bounce back, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in a little bit. And if all of those guys play like they're capable of playing, and by that I mean very well, like they have all season, the Vikings are going to be in much better shape Monday night against the Rams than they were last Monday night against Detroit. They just are. And I believe that is going to happen, and they are going to play very well, in which case the results of Monday night's game between the Rams and the Vikings are going to be much different than they were with the Vikings and the Lions. So that's one reason I'm not worrying and trying to be happy. The second reason that I'm trying to put a positive, I've had a positive attitude and I feel much better about this game, even with what happened Monday night against Detroit, is just looking at Sam Darnold and how he has played when he has had a poor game previously in this season. And this is also good news. There haven't been very many of them. And besides the Detroit game, I would say only 2. Some people would say the Indianapolis game was a poor game by him. I disagree. Yes, he threw 2 interceptions in that one, but he also threw 3 touchdown passes and had his highest completion percentage of the entire season in that game. So he made some poor decisions, some poor mistakes, but he also made a lot of good decisions and good plays in that game. So I'm not counting that as a poor game by him, though it often gets cited as one. But the first poor game of the season he had, we'll remember, was in London against the Jets. And that was up until last Monday night, that was his worst game of the season. And I think we mostly remember that one. But, just to jot down a few stats on that, looking at my notes here, Darnold in that game completed 45% of his passes, only 179 passing yards, didn't throw a touchdown pass, 1 interception. And if the defense, and Van Ginkel in particular, doesn't get a pick 6, and Shaq Griffin makes that interception late in the game, we probably lose that game. But we won it, despite Darnold not playing well. How did Darnold respond to that very poor performance? Well, the next week against Detroit at home, very tough, big, very highly anticipated big game. Even though we lost, he went 22 for 27. That was an 81.5 completion percentage, which was his second best completion percentage of the year, besides the Colts game. Threw for 259 yards, 1 touchdown pass, 1 interception. So I think that's pretty solid play coming off a very poor performance the week before. And he had the Vikings in position to be competitive in that game and win that game. So that's encouraging. Now, his other poor game was against the Jags. Completion percentage-wise, yards-wise, Darnold was, played fairly well that way. But, of course, he had the 3 interceptions, a couple in the red zone, made some other poor decisions that could have been interceptions. That was a very poor game for him as far as decision-making goes and turning the ball over. Now, how did he fare after that? Well, next week against Tennessee, he completes almost 63% of his passes, 246 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and not even in that game, people remember, there wasn't one throw that was really, you kind of thought, that could have been a turnover. He played really, really well in that one. And Tyler Forness said in the post game after that win over Tennessee that he thought that was Darnold's best game of the year so far. So Darnold, as we've seen in a couple of cases after very poor performances, that Sam Darnold has bounced back and played pretty well after that. Now, I know this is a different situation. Darnold's never started a playoff game in the NFL. He has never been in a situation up until last week, but this one will be, I think, amped up even more. He hasn't been in many pressure cooker situations like he's going to face Monday night against the Rams. But you got to look at the track record this year with him. And I just don't believe that Darnold is going to put up 2 stinkers in a row because he hasn't done that all year. And so, yeah, different stakes, different situation, playoffs, or you're in a one and done situation here. But I just feel confident based on what I've seen all year from Sam Darnold that he is not going to repeat what he did last Monday night against Detroit. And he's going to play not just solidly Monday night, but he's going to play very well. And again, if Sam Darnold plays very well in this game, the Vikings' chances of winning this are very, very good. So those are 2 big reasons why I feel that I am not worrying and I'm being happy leading up to this game, whereas a lot of people and even the national pundits seem to think that the Rams are going to win this one. Dave, interested to see how you feel going into this game.
Well, we'll get to why the Rams may or may not win. But I do believe when we lost the 2 in a row, and that includes to the Rams on the short week and the bullshit officiating and all the other stuff that went into that one, we went on a 9-game winning streak up until last week. So unless we repeat and lose 2 again, we're primed for another winning streak. And that's what we need. Now, the competition is a whole lot better.
Yes.
Right? Because when we went on that 9-game winning streak, a good chunk of that and a good front part of that was the AFC South, which absolutely stunk and allowed Sam to have a couple bad games, and we still won games. But now everybody's got to be clicking. Now, can he? Yes, I hope so. I'm hoping last Sunday's game was the punch in the face. That, hey, Mike Tyson's talked about it numerous times. You have a plan until you get punched in the face. Well, I think these players mentally had a plan going into the game, and they got punched in the face. Well, now they need to reevaluate. And hopefully they've reevaluated over the week, figured out, all right, what I need to do different, not get so hyped up, not press, not do whatever, focus on what it takes to go 1-0 this week. And if they can do that, they got a real good chance of winning. And then we go back to Detroit, and we'll see how that goes. So that's what I feel about that one. And let me catch up with the remarks. I want to thank everybody that's here. Aaron, Norsevius, Nick, Jason, David Rinaldi, yo. So good to see you all. Good to see you all. Norsevius Chandler is no good unless he's in the open field. Well, we'll talk about running backs in the offseason, I'm sure.
Yeah. I feel quite confident that Chandler will not be getting many reps Monday night unless there's an injury, based on what we've seen for the past, basically since they got Cam Akers. He's a kickoff returner right now, and that's about it. So not to worry about that. I actually, I think I might forget about it in the game preview, but I'm hoping that, I know Akers had the longest, I believe his run last week, which was 56 yards or 54 yards. That was the longest run by a Vikings running back this year. But I really hope that going into this game that we see Akers infrequently and Aaron Jones basically all the time, because I just feel that Jones is, he is the better player, pass protection and pass catching and explosiveness and running and everything else. And we need him out there as much as possible. He doesn't need a breather because if they lose, he's going to have a very long breather.
Yep. And he has experience in the playoffs, so which helps. All right. Now on to theme 2. As usual, we start off with This Week in Vikings Land.
Yeah, we need some sort of echo on your voice for that, Dave. Echo.
Okay.
But yeah, we do a few. Going to go through 3 items that new Vikings news that caught my attention, and I wanted to address this week. And 2 of them. Well, there was a lot of talk this week about coaches and where they might be next year, Dave, wasn't there?
Yes, there was.
And the first one, predictable, was about our head coach, Kevin O'Connell. And the reason it became news is because this guy, Jay Glazer, came out, I think, on Sunday, saying that there was multiple teams that were considering whether they should trade for Kevin O'Connell in the offseason. And then on Tuesday, Ryan Poles, the Bears general manager, talked about how in their head coaching search, they are not going to rule out that they might trade for a head coach. Trade with the team to get their next head coach. So all of that is bubbled. And of course, reporters who follow the Vikings are caught on to that. And then in Kevin O'Connell's presser, I think it was ESPN's Kevin Seifert, asked Kevin O'Connell point blank, what do you think about the reports, particularly from Glazer, that multiple teams are looking to trade for you and move you out of Minnesota? And it was a bit rare because you could tell that Kevin O'Connell knew he was going to get asked the question, but you also could tell that he really hated that he got asked the question. And because he had kind of a sour look on his face, and he, as politely as he could, he said, hey, love this team, love this organization. I don't want to be anywhere else. And I also don't want to ask answer this fucking question again because my focus is on the Rams, as it should be, and let's move on with that. And that's what I want to talk about in this press conference. And that's the way things rolled out after that. But even though that as KOC shot that down as well he should, and as I expected him to, I think folks are still going to blame the Wilfs a bit that this has even become an issue because they didn't extend Kevin O'Connell either before the season started or sometime early during the season. And to me, we talked about this back when it got mentioned, Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah both have, they're heading into their third year, their 4-year deal. None of them have extensions. What are the Vikings going to do? Should they sign them? And at that time, I felt, hey, hold the brakes, guys. I don't think Kevin O'Connell or Kwesi Adofo-Mensah have done enough to earn an extension yet. I'd like to see what happens in 2024. And I don't know what the Wilfs, what kind of conversations they had with Kevin O'Connell in particular about an extension or his contract situation, but if I were them, here's the conversation I would have had with them, Dave, and it would have kind of went something like this, which would have been, Kevin, we love you. We love your personality. We love what you've done so far since you've been in this building. We love the culture that you have developed in Minnesota. Players respect you and they like, coming to work. They love coming to work. They love playing for you. Players who are on other teams want to come here and play for you. That's all great. We recognize you won a divisional title your first year as a rookie head coach. We recognize that you kept this team competitive and in the playoff hunt in 2023, despite losing your starting quarterback and having to start 4 different quarterbacks during that season, including one who was not on the team until like November or whatever. But hey, this is the NFL. Things change quickly. We'd like to see a bit more data before we get into the extension situation. And so let's play this out in 2024, see how things go. We don't want to address this during the season because it's going to be difficult. Your focus should be on the Vikings and leading them during the regular season and having them prepared and have the best season they can possibly have. But as soon as the 2024 season is over, we are going to sit down with you and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and work out, see if we can come to an agreement on the contract that's good for both sides. And I don't think that the Vikings, and they should have their timeline on this extension stuff sped up because the media thinks that they should. If they why sign guys to an extension off of a 1 divisional title in 2 years? I want to see more too, and the Wilfs have. And so Kevin O'Connell isn't going anywhere. And I think this 2024 season, Dave, and I think most people would agree, is they have seen the data now. They have seen what Kevin O'Connell has done with Sam Darnold in particular, how he's turned his career around, how he's got this team, which was expected to have 6 to 6 and 7 wins, had 14, was playing for the number 1 seed in the NFC. I think they know now that they've got the right guy in the building to lead this team. And so Kevin O'Connell ain't going anywhere. And as soon as this season is over, however long that takes, I expect early in February, the Wilfs are going to sit down and have talks with him and get this hammered out. And the trading stuff, Dave, you look at it, the history of it, there have been 8 NFL coaches that have been traded from the team that they were on to a new team. And 5 of those, they're Don Shula, Bill Parcells, Herm Edwards, Mike Holmgren. I'm kind of losing out on here. Bill Belichick, John Gruden, Bruce Arians, surprisingly, and Sean Payton. And of those, what's that? Yeah. And of those 8 guys, 5 have at least taken the new team that they're traded to. They've either won a Super Bowl or they have taken that team to a Super Bowl. And that's Arians, Belichick, Don Shula, Gruden, and Mike Holmgren. And Sean Payton, in just 2 years, in his second year as the head coach in Detroit, like you say, he had gotten Denver into the playoffs for the first time since 2015. So I think the history of teams trading coaches is that the takeaway from that is that if you got a real good head coach, you do not trade him to another team unless there's the guy wants out, like Belichick wanted out in New York with the New York Jets. You don't get rid of them unless that's the
or
coach does.
Shula wanted out when he left the Colts.
And Peyton wasn't going back to the Saints either. Right.
But some of these trades were voluntary, as in both teams worked something out, and some of them were, what's the word I want to use? Retaliatory. Mm-hmm. For tampering and coercing, Don Shula being one of them, where the NFL came back and go, nope, you're losing 3 picks, they're going over here.
Yeah. But I think, what that history tells you is that the really good head coaches, if a team thinks that they're good enough that they want to trade draft picks for a head coach, it happens so rarely. You've probably the team the coach that you have, if you get a trade offer for a head coach, you've got a pretty good head coach that you don't want to leave the building. And the Vikings have that in Kevin O'Connell, and he's not going anywhere. And this is going to get settled in very quickly in the offseason, along with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, particularly with what's gone on in 2024. Even if the Vikings, and it's not going to happen, are one and done in the playoffs, Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah are getting extensions very, very soon in the 2020-25 offseason. Mm-hmm. As well they should, because I think this year they did what I wanted to see, which was get the Vikings back in the playoff hunt and and they not only have a record that says they're one of the best teams in the NFL, but they actually played like one of the best teams in the NFL, which was not the case in 2022.
Yep. I was just surprised at how many are considered trades, that there was 8 in the last 54 seasons. That's a lot, I would think. More than I thought there originally was.
Right. Yeah, because after a while, you kind of forget about them, right? Like Herm Edwards, I didn't remember that one at all. Right. Or even the Don Shula one, which was the very first.
Mm-hmm. And it's just, and those are, Don Shula obviously got the Dolphins to the Super Bowl. Herm Edwards did not. He was one of the fails. But it's rare. It's uber rare now. We'll find out, But I doubt it. That's up to the Wilfs. If they get a call, it just ups the dollar amount for KOC and Kwesi, or it ups the compensation in a trade. And it would have to be an absolute boatload for them to say, okay. It'd have to be a Herschel Walker style.
Yeah, which I don't think you're going to get anymore. Consider it only happened once anyway. Well, twice, I guess. Ditka did trade his entire draft for Ricky Williams. So that was pretty significant too.
Yes. But anyways. All right. Speaking of coaches, Brian Flores.
Yeah. When Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell do get their extensions, it's possible that one of their first things on their to-do list could be replacing our defensive coordinator, because Brian Flores, as we've heard, has gotten so far 3 interview requests from the Jets, from the Bears, and from the Jacksonville Jaguars to interview for their head coaching vacancies. And this is quite a different, this is a complete turnaround from last year when Flores got 0 head coaching interview requests. He said early in the year that he was interested in becoming a head coach again, and that he said this week that he's going to take every interview request that he gets. He also said that he'll only move to the right situation. He made it clear that New England would be one of those right situations, but so far he hasn't gotten an interview request from them yet. But nonetheless, it does raise a specter that we could lose Brian Flores as our defensive coordinator. And Dave, again, I think you and I are in complete agreement with this. We do not want to lose Brian Flores as our defensive coordinator. When you look at the job he has done in turning one of the worst defenses in the NFL into one of the best, He's done a phenomenal job just there. But it's not just the technical stuff, the X and O's that he's so good at, devising schemes to beat offenses and how he teaches it. I think also he's shown himself to be a very astute evaluator of talent. You got to remember, he came up, his original job with the Patriots was as a scout, a player scout. So when you look at what he's done, we know he's had a pretty significant role in the defensive players that the Vikings have brought in the past 2 years. When you look at how those have worked out, he's done a really good job evaluating talent and bringing in guys like Blake Cashman, like Jonathan Grenard, like Andrew Van Ginkel, and others who are able to that fit the scheme that he's running and are able to play well in that scheme and be really significant contributors to his defense. So that's not always going to be the case with your defensive coordinator. They might not be very astute, might not be as good at evaluating talent and seeing what talent out there in free agency will work well with their defense than another guy. Well, Brian Flores has been able to do that, so to lose that would be a big loss. I think there's still some hope, Dave, that Flores, even though he's got 3 interview requests, he will not be heading to, will not get those jobs. When you look at the 5 vacancies so far, you've got him up there. Not only the Bears, Jets, and the Jags, but also the Saints and the Raiders and the Patriots. In a lot of those, with the Bears, the Jets, the Patriots, the Raiders, and the Saints, all of those teams are fired defensive-minded head coaches. So we know, Dave, that oftentimes teams, after they fire a head coach, they kind of go the other way with the head coach that they're going to hire. So if you had a defensive-minded guy, well, you look at going for an offensive guru to offset that. So the Jags are the only team that have so far fired an offensive-minded guy in Doug Peterson. So I think there's that. I think a lot of those teams too also have quarterback issues and young quarterbacks. And do they want to have a defensive-minded guy to work with that? They probably would prefer to have an offensive guru like a Ben Johnson, like a Cliff Kingsbury, to be the head coach and work with that young quarterback in their situation so they can get the most out of that young quarterback. So I think that's working against Flores and could be one reason why he doesn't get a head coaching job in the NFL and returns as our defensive coordinator. Of course, he's got the ongoing lawsuit with the NFL, which I think is still going to hang over him and is going to impact whether teams are willing to hire him. I think the third thing is that we remember the Tua Tagovailoa comments before the season started about how Flores was a terrible person and he almost ruined Tagovailoa, and Tagovailoa just did not have anything good to say about Brian Flores as a head coach. Now, Flores addressed that at the time, but this week, Ryan Fitzpatrick, who also played under Flores, doubled down on that criticism on his own podcast. And he talked about how Flores was. He described him as his tenure went on in Miami, even though he got good results on the field. Fitzpatrick said that Brian Flores, he described him as a dictator. He said that he alienated almost all of his entire coaching staff as time went on, and that his ego got so big that there was only room for his ego and nobody else's in the Miami organization. Now, Dave, that was 3 or 4 years ago. I think that it's, from what I've seen and how the Vikings defensive players react to Brian Flores, that Brian Flores is not that guy anymore, at least as a defensive coordinator. But that is pretty damning stuff to come out the week that you get interview requests. And teams that are interviewing him, Dave, are going to dig deep into what happened in Miami because they do not want that happening again in their organization if Brian Flores takes over. And he's going to get they're probably going to spend as much time on that, if not more, than on what's your X and O's plan and all that other, on the field stuff, because you can't have a head coach in there who's a dictator, who's going to be really, really rough on young players, particularly a young quarterback, and potentially ruin them. So there's a lot of things at play here, and a lot of things that I think could prevent Brian Flores from getting a head coaching job, even with the job he's done with the Vikings defense this year. Like I said, taking a defense that was terrible and turning it into a top 5 unit in the NFL.
I agree. And I agree with Northfield. He said he's not going to just take any job. He wants, and part of a good head coach is to validate the ownership of the team they're going to and the whole situation. Look at the staff, everybody that's there, how the facilities, how it's run, yada, yada. And whether he can live with it or make improvements on it or however it is. Say if you're going to Cincinnati, can you live with practicing under an interstate? You know, it's that sort of deal. You've got to look at it. Now, out of all the teams that are presently looking for head coaches, and all 6 of them are up there, there's a lot where you question their ownership. The Jets.
Yes.
Is a big one. I wouldn't question the Patriots ownership. Obviously, William Kraft is a very good owner on that one. The Jags, you'd question. The Saints. The Raiders is you'd normally question, but now they have Tom Brady. Well, Belichick worked with Brady. So, but there's not been an offer made there yet. However, it's been hypothesized over.
Yeah.
And that's the only one going from an offensive coach. The best one out of the bunch that I see that he might take, if offered, is Chicago. Now, their ownership group, the McCaskies, aren't the greatest either. Their fans want the son, the grandson, whoever it is that runs it to sell the team. But Ryan Poles and Beeflo have a history, whether they were both at Boston College or wherever it was, they do have a history and know each other. Now, but they have that rookie quarterback that has issues, has all the talent in the world, but, and Eberflus messed him up, and then they got the new guy, and the new guy calmed him down a bit, but they didn't do nothing, right? Except for beat the Packers in the end, which was great. So if B-Flow takes a look at the organizations and just wants to go to someplace that's pretty well set, I think he's begging for New England, but I don't know that he's going to go there. There's not a whole lot to choose from. I think he may be back because he may say there's just not anything that strikes my fancy. I'm going to stay. There's nothing, hey, these guys can offer me the job and everything, but there's no reason to move at this time. So we'll see. Jason, I agree. The Bears will most likely go with, they'll be smart to go with an offensive guy. Ben Johnson now, however, he's interviewing all over. But it's going to be interesting to see who and how it all works out. Yes, Northfield, all 6 of those, with the exception of the Patriots organization, I would say stink. Now, the Patriots team is shot and they're in rebuild mode. So, but, and, his whole dictator deal, I got an issue with that too. One, he's from the Bill Belichick tree. All right, we know Bill Belichick, and his tree is poisonous. And maybe he tried doing I'm going to be the Bill Belichick thing down in Florida, and it failed miserably. He has probably since learned, both being with the Steelers and with us, no, we got to get more lovey-dovey, the whole communication and collaboration and all that warm, fuzzy shit. That it takes.
And he has said that. He did say that this week, that he has, without in not so many words, but that he learned a lot from Tomlin and KOC and how they do things and how they work with quarterbacks, particularly KOC. So there's an evolution that's definitely gone on there in the past 3-4 years.
Mm-hmm. So it's whether he takes any of these guys, and whether North Face talk about Bears need a Sandlight style OC because Caleb can't play in structure, it's going to be interesting. To me, if he went with Caleb, that would be an obvious rub because I think he likes structure. Even though he's, I want to develop you and play you where I want you to play, where you can do the most damage. Can he do that with an offense? I don't know. What was it, the second or third year with Miami? He got him to the playoffs. Is just going to be interesting. That's for sure. All right. Now on to where were we?
Final segment.
You were talking about how we know 2024 isn't over yet.
Yes, but we also know our 2025 opponents. I don't know when we'll be playing them, but the NFL, with what happened on Tuesday night or Monday night in Detroit, with the Vikings finishing second in the NFC North, that solidified our opponents for 2025. We already knew, you're going to play our NFC North divisional opponents twice a year, but we also knew we were going to get the AFC North. There are 4 teams, and as well as the NFC East before Monday night. What we didn't know was whether we'd finish first or second place. Well, we finished second place, so now we get the Seattle Seahawks, the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Atlanta Falcons will be our other opponents in 2025. And so just wanted to take a look at that. And, that seems like, maybe we say this every year, Dave, but that looks like a pretty tough schedule from the get-go. Just look at the NFC North, right? You got a 15-win team that won the division in Detroit. The Vikings you had an 11-win team with Green Bay, and then Chicago. At one point they were 4-2, and looked like they're on the upswing. We expect that they'll be better next year as well. A lot that goes into that, but that they seem that they're a team that could be a bit on the rise. So your division is very tough to start off with. The NFC East, a lot of good quarterbacks there. You'll have to face Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commies, who are resurgent. You've got Jalen Hurts and Philly, and a very young and tough defense. And with the offensive line they have and the offensive weapons they have, they will be a difficult out. The Cowboys, Dak Prescott will be back. They'll possibly be healthier with Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb. I don't think they'll be as bad as they were last year. They're probably going to be on the upswing a bit. They'll be a tough out. The Giants would be the only one that are going to be a bit of a mess next year from that division. So some tough opponents there. The AFC North, pretty tough, right? Like you're going to be facing Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. Fortunately, we've got those at home, but still, those are going to be tough teams and tough quarterbacks for the Vikings to face. And then your road games are going to be in Cleveland and Pittsburgh. I don't think the Vikings have won in Pittsburgh since 1996. It's been a long time. That's always a tough place to play, no matter what state the Steelers are at, and they're usually competitive under Mike Tomlin. And then Cleveland, depending on the time of the year it's at, they'll probably have a new quarterback next year. Maybe his name will be Sam Darnold. and if
they got still pay the old one, he blew his Achilles again.
Yes, he did. Yes, and that will impact what kind of resources they can put into the quarterback position for sure.
Because he's got an injury guarantee.
Yeah, but depending on the time of the year, the Cleveland Browns defense, even this year, was still very tough at times. You could get some very tough weather there. That could be, that's a tough slate of opponents there. And then you got Atlanta. They'll probably have Michael Penix starting. He looked encouraging in some of the work that in his 3 starts this year, and Atlanta will have a whole year working with him and adding to the offense and the defense to improve their team. You got to face Justin Herbert and the really improved Los Angeles Chargers under Jim Harbaugh, who always gets his teams to be successful. We'll have to face them. And then you got to go to Lumen Field. Yes, we won last year, but that's always a tough place to play. And the Seahawks in year 2 under Mike McDonald, we don't know who they're going to have at quarterback. Maybe it'll be Sam Darnold too. But that's always a tough place to play and a tough place to win. So Vikings won 14 games this in the regular season. When we look at their schedule and the opponents they played before the year started, we thought it was pretty tough. But as the season went on, the strength of schedule looked a little bit softer than what we anticipated early in the year. But this schedule right now, if you look at it just on paper, going to be very tough, I think, for the Vikings to repeat a 14-win season based on the opponents I'm seeing there right now. Doesn't mean we could be a better team and still have a record of 11-6 or 12-5. But it looks like a very tough slate and a lot of tough quarterbacks that we got to face too.
Oh, without a doubt, that's not going to be easy by any means. But hey, it's the NFL. You still got to go out there and win. So
that is true.
And we're supposedly getting in our Super Bowl window, so let's prove it.
And, there's something I think to be said about, competition stealing you for the tough playoff run. Whereas maybe you play a very tough slate of opponents and it leads to a lesser record than if you played easier. But when it comes to playoff time, if you make the playoffs, you have played the best of the best and shown you can go toe-to-toe with them. You can go into the playoffs with a ton of confidence that on the road, at home, wherever, you have got a really good shot at winning that game. I think the Vikings still feel that way this year, but certainly I think that if you have a tougher schedule and still have a very good season, that can even increase that belief.
Mm-hmm. Yep. On to theme 3.
Oh, theme 3. What could that be?
Theme 3, the game.
Wild Card Monday.
Yeah, Monday night. Yes, another late one.
I know. Just love it.
For the live at the 2-minute warning, we should have everybody except for Sal this week. Sal got tickets.
Oh.
She's flying down. We'll fly down tomorrow, I think it is. And she'll fly back on Tuesday. And which may mess with her show on Tuesday night. So just a heads up.
Well, the Vikings better win for Sal then. She's going all that way to watch them play. They gotta pull out a W for her. I hope they know that. But Let's get on to the game here a bit, Dave. Talk about a few things. First one is, it's been a challenging week for the Rams as far as prep goes. With all the wildfire situation in the LA area, NFL on Thursday announced that they're moving the game from the Rams' home spot in SoFi Stadium to Glendale State Fair Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. So that is official. So not a great deal for the Rams, where they now SoFi Stadium is not known as like a real tough place to play, Dave. Not like Arrowhead Stadium or Lumen Field or US Bank Stadium, because LA fans are kind of fair weather fans, and they don't really care about football there that much for some reason. Too many other distractions, I guess. When the Rams moved to St. Louis, and
all that history. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. But even so, getting your home playoff game moved to a neutral site that's not great for you. I think we don't know how many are your home fans who are going to be at that game. Are they going to travel all the way, make the 6-hour drive to Glendale, or fly to make it shorter? Are they going to do that? Spend the coin to go to Glendale to watch you play? We do know that the 52,000 seats were sold to LA Rams season ticket holders and to Arizona fans, season ticket holders, leading up to this game. So, but still,
the Cardinals do not have any love for the Rams whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. So there's some questions there whether what the home field advantage is going to actually be for the Rams in this game. And even if they did get a home field advantage, Dave, it's got to have been a tough week with all the players. How distracted are they going to be when you've got to prepare for a playoff game, but yet you're still worried about, do I have a home? What's going to happen to my family in this home with all that's going on there? So it's been a very stressful week for Rams coaches and staff, and how they're able to block out that and prepare for that game with all that's been going on with the wildfires, I don't know. Certainly hope that this gets resolved as soon as possible and there's as little damage to property and loss of life as possible in the area for sure. But
and you know about wildfires.
I do. So I sure do. And having to evacuate ain't no fun. Let me just put it that way. But in this case, as much as I feel for the people of Los Angeles, if this results in Los Angeles players, their focus being diverted and playing poorly Monday night, so be it. We shall see if that happens, but not a pretty tough situation for the Rams in preparation-wise with what's happened here. And also on Thursday, you got news that one of their players, wide receiver Demarcus Robinson, was charged with one count of misdemeanor of driving under the influence. This came off of an arrest that happened in November 25th. Robinson was arrested for suspicion of DUI. So this got announced on Wednesday. Not going to affect his availability because Robinson was not suspended or held out of any games by the Rams when he got arrested, and the NFL is not doing any suspension, just like they didn't with Jordan Addison on this until the legal process works its way out. But still, not great for Robinson when, again, all that he and the other players are dealing with the wildfires and evacuation and all of that, for this to come down a couple of days before the game. And Robinson is an underrated cog in the Rams offense because, yeah, he's only got 31 catches, but he's averaging 16.3 yards per catch, and he has 7 touchdown catches, which both are tops on the team. So he's kind of an important guy for this offense. And again, if this charge, which is now a charge, it means he's going to have to go to court and defend this. If that's taking away from his focus of the game and got him down, along with all that's going on with the wildfires, a little bit of an advantage for the Vikings defense. I don't know, but not a great week for the Rams off the field heading into this game. What about on the
at least be trash talking fodder for the
defense. True enough. Let's hope they keep it somewhat civil, but we shall see. I guess on the field stuff, though, what's kind of the things that I'm looking at and you're looking at, Dave, as far as keys to this game. Okay. Offensively for the Vikings, talked about it earlier. You're coming off your worst performance of the year. Only scored 9 points against Detroit. It's the least amount of points the Vikings scored all season after you were rolling. And it shakes your confidence, I think, as fans in what Darnold and the Vikings offense can do. But does it shake the players' confidence in what they can do? I think in this one, I feel like I say this every week, but I think it is very important. The Rams, in that first game against the Vikings and the Rams, if we remember, first 2 drives by the Vikings, they just went up and down the field, no problem, no resistance from the Rams, scored 2 touchdowns. Okay, but then in their other following 7 drives, they had 3 punts. There was a safety, which shouldn't have been a safety, but it was a safety. 1 kneel down, couple of field goals, right? We just didn't do enough. And after those 2 drives, the Rams front 7, actually, they choked off our running game and they got a lot more pressure on Darnold and made him, I think, a lot more uncomfortable in the game. And he was less effective than he had been in the first 2 drives. Well, this worries me, again, based on what we saw from what happened Monday night in Detroit, because you look at the Rams front 7, like the defensive line, edge rushers in particular. Kobe Turner has 8 sacks. Jared Verse, the rookie, 4.5 sacks, who played very well in that game against the Vikings, a couple of months ago. Byron Young, 7.5 sacks. And then the other rookie, Braden Fisk, who's not an edge rusher, he's in a defensive end on the defensive line. He led the team with 8.5 sacks. And I think they're a powerful group. I think they're pretty good. Also can be pretty stout against the run. Again, in this game, how the Vikings offensive line handles those guys and how much time they give Sam Darnold, that's going to be to determine whether the Vikings are successful on offense or not, like they were Monday night against the
how
Lions.
Much time they're going to give Darnold? It's more like how much time is the O-line going to give Darnold against these guys?
That's true. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, edge rusher. All right. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4.
I'd love them to do that.
I would too, but it shouldn't be.
Not going to happen. I was reading Matt Bowen, who's a former NFL safety, and he now writes kind of X's and O's type of articles for ESPN. He talked about how 6 underdogs in the wild card, how they could pull an upset off. And looking at the Rams, he thinks the big thing is that Chris Shula, the Rams defensive coordinator, is going to try to attack the Vikings' interior offensive line. Surprise, surprise. and create.
You aren't a defensive coordinator worth a damn unless you do that against the Vikings.
But he thinks that they're going to go and try to create pressure in the A and B gaps, and also use particularly Turner and Verse and Young, and use stunts to loop those guys around and get them on one of the interior guys, which is basically what Aaron Glenn did Monday night against the Vikings. And that pressure in the A and B gaps, which was so effective for Detroit, it really impacted Sam Darnold, because when he's been pressured other times this year, it hasn't always come up the middle. And so he's been able to move, to his left or to his right and escape some of that stuff, and then still keep his eyes down the field and then hunt for big plays and make a lot of big plays. Monday night against Detroit, because so much was coming in, that pressure was coming up in that A and B gap, and I think Tyler Forness did mention this in the post game show. He said Darnold didn't have those escape routes anymore, so he was getting stepped on. He's getting his arm hit in the middle. He couldn't move left or right to escape the pressure. So Chris Shula is going to try to do the same thing, and if they are effective in that, it's going to be a tough night for the Vikings overall. So I do worry about that. The Vikings have got to win that battle. If they don't, it's going to be a long night for the offense. Now, I think Kevin O'Connell wasn't his finest day Monday night in calling a game against Detroit. Again, recognizing that there were some plays that were left out there that if they'd been successful and the players had done what they should have done, either thrown a good pass or caught the pass that was at them, things could have been a little bit different. But still, you didn't see enough answers to what Detroit was doing, particularly in the short game. And I know this has been mentioned in our comments, but we've got to have answers for the Rams if they blitz. They play a lot of zone from what I understand, so they're not going to be able to get their mitts on guys like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison as much as the Lions could. But still, you got to have time to throw the ball, particularly with the way that, again, that Sam Darnold holds the ball in the pocket and the way KOC calls it. But KOC's got to have some short answers. Like, I don't think it's a bad idea. Like, just try early to get a few short screens to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. Maybe they get 4, 5, 6 yards. That's okay. Move on from that. Let's try to get some early completions. On the blitz, let's try to hit a screen passes over the blitzers. Get the ball into Aaron Jones' hands or Cam Akers' hands, get a blocker out in front, let them rumble for 8, 9 yards or whatever, and punish the Rams for blitzing us. Also, if they send a safety or a corner on the blitz or an edge rusher from there, throw into where the blitzer is vacated, like Detroit does, and get some wins there. Those have to be. You'd think every team does it, but it feels like we don't respond to pressure the same way as other teams do. That has to be part of the game plan. Just make things a little bit easier for Sam Darnold early on to get him into a rhythm. We don't have to look for the 40 or 50 yarders right away. Let's try to break some tendencies and catch the Rams off guard. It's also, Dave, not a bad idea, I think, too, especially if the game is close. It's okay to call 2 runs in a row. even if the first run by Jones or Akers does not get you the 7 or 8 yards you were hoping for. Like, again, break some tendencies. Don't be so predictable and going run, then pass, pass, pass. How about run, or run, pass, run, or just
that
don't
was one
abandon.
of our complaints about the previous coach.
Yes. I just feel that, let's not abandon the run too quickly, even if the run doesn't seem to be giving us those big explosive gains. But a 4-yard gain is good on first down. It's okay to follow it up with a 3-yard gain after that. Then you're in 3rd and 3 and you can do whatever you want. So I feel that Kevin O'Connell's got to try to call the game a little bit differently than he did Monday night. And we'll see if those adjustments are made. Defensively for the Vikings, I feel that they played pretty well, at least for almost 3 quarters against Detroit. So they were able to get pressure on Jared Goff, Dave. They intercepted him twice. They got him off his spot. He did beat us on some of those blitzes, but not all the time. We got, a few tip passes. We did some good things. We just were on the field too long, and you're on the field too long against a really, really, really good offense like Detroit. They're going to eventually get home on you. And they did. But against the Rams, like we know in that Rams game, anybody that watched it, that was one of the worst defensive performance, possibly the worst that the Vikings had all year. We just could not stop Matt Stafford. And Brian Flores admitted this week that they didn't think Puka Nacua was playing, so they weren't really ready for him when he did show up. But they'll be ready for him this time. Well, I hope so, because the Rams, one thing they do very well, this is something Ben Solak brought up, is that they're pretty love using the short passing game to set things up, and they are very good they've been doing a lot this year of running a wide receiver in motion into their bunch formations. And that causes confusion in the defensive players and who they're going to cover and who passes off who. And it also gives the guy running into the bunch a lot of extra momentum to go into their route. They've been very successful at that. Against the Detroit, Dave, what was really encouraging to me was Detroit also enjoys the wide receiver screens and screens to running back and the short passing game and getting offensive linemen and wide receivers out blocking for those horizontal passes and turning them into big gains. We were ready for that in the first half. We sniffed them out. We tackled well when we got there. They did not get they basically stopped throwing screens to the running backs after the first half. We did a great job on that. We're going to have to do it again against the Rams because they do similar things and they're very effective at it. And you just can't, we've got to be there and be able to take down Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp on first contact, like I said last week, so that you don't, again, turn a pass that's 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage turns into a 10 or 12 or 15-yard game because you got outflanked. You couldn't beat the blockers. You didn't sniff it out in time. Brian Flores and the Vikings defense have to be able to do that. Otherwise, again, going to be a long night. I do have confidence that they can be better at that than they were in the first game against the Rams because, again, they know that Kupp and Nacua are going to be playing and how they defended the Lions last week. They can use that as a blueprint for what they're going to do against the Rams. The other thing, of course, is pressure against Stafford. We got none of it the last game. No sacks, only 2 hits on him. He was only pressured 4 times. He was only hurried twice. He's only been sacked 28 times, Dave, this season. But there have been games where he has been, hurried. Green Bay sacked him 5 times. They had 14 pressures on him a couple of weeks before the Vikings played. More recently, Philly sacked him 5 times. They had 11 hurries on him. There have been teams that have been able to impact him, but it hasn't been the norm. 11 of Stafford's 16 starts, he has been sacked 2 times or fewer. So this is a tough situation, but the Vikings have to figure out how to get pressures because Stafford in the last game, he got rid of the ball very quickly with that short horizontal passing game, and we just didn't have time to get there. In order to get there, you're going to have to win on first down and second down. Get them in 3rd and long. Like I said all year, if you can get the opposing offense, this defense can get an opposing offense in 3rd and long consistently, I feel pretty good about our chances of getting off the field. But we didn't do that at all against the Rams in the first game, Got to do a much better job of doing that in this game. And we got to do a better job of keeping running back Kyron Williams under control. Now, he's not a spectacular guy like a Saquon Barkley or Jahmyr Gibbs. His longest run this year is 30 yards. He's averaging 4.1 yards per carry, but he's a closer. He's got 14 rushing TDs. 11 of 16 games he's played in this year, he's had 70 rushing yards or more. And that includes against the Vikings, he had 94 rushing yards. So he's a guy who's he's steady. He gets consistently productive yardage. He doesn't take a lot of negative runs. And so he keeps the Rams in good down and distance situations and doesn't get them behind the chains. And the Vikings have got to stuff him and make him a non-factor. And they did not do that last time, but they got to do it this time because, again, if he's getting a 4 yards here, 4 yards there, and it's 3rd and 2, that's the kind of situation the Rams offense with Matt Stafford and his experience and who he's got to throw to. And they got Tyler Higbee back now. I think their tight end, who they didn't have last time, he'll be a help in the passing game. So it's a tough assignment for the Vikings, but I still feel good about it. We've got some very good players too. And Kevin O'Connell, I think it's time. He's going up against his pro, the master, Sean McVay. It's time for Kevin O'Connell to teach the master a lesson. And I think he is going to do it Monday night after licking his wounds from what happened in Detroit a week ago. He's going to have this team ready to play. He's going to have a better game plan offensively for how we attack the Rams defense. And Brian Flores is going to have a better game plan, and the players are going to execute that game plan well against the Rams. We're going to do it. We're going to beat them.
Hey, I hope so. And as Dean points out, we were missing Cashman last time. And having Cashman and Pace both out there is going to help. That's going to be a change. I had Dallas Turner up there. Dallas Turner's getting more playtime. Patrick Jones is out already for this week. So he's getting more playtime. That's different. I do believe the defense is pretty much set up to where it can hopefully control the game from their side of the line of scrimmage. Hopefully get some pressure on Stafford and get him sacked. Sacking him's a big deal in the games they've lost. So if we can do that, I think this game will be very winnable on our end. So we'll see. Now, there was a question. I started real quick. I want to give Andrew Fitz some credit for. He says, you think McVay or KOC, knowing each other, which coach does it benefit the most? The master or the Padawan?
Well, it feels like I didn't get a chance. I didn't have time to look into this, but it feels like much like Belichick used to do, or like him, but he had much more of his tree go on to become head coaches. And it feels like when McVay faces one of his proteges, whether it be Brandon Staley or Sean's, some of the others, that he comes out on top almost all of the time in those situations. And he did against Kevin O'Connell this year. The first time. So, but I just don't feel it's unless you like. If one coach is just vastly superior than the other, then they're going to game plan them all the time. I just don't feel in this case that Kevin O'Connell is going to get outclassed by Sean McVay. Yeah, he learned under Sean McVay. He also learned under Kyle Shanahan and other guys. So he's taken a lot of his coaching philosophy from a lot of different coaches, not just Sean McVay. Developed his own.
Diverging from.
And he has shown an ability to have the Vikings ready and to win games against tough teams in his 3 seasons here. I don't expect this to be any different. I think he learned a lot from that first game against McVay. And so I guess my answer is I think that it's going to benefit the Vikings in this case because KLC will have a better idea what he's up against with McVay, what kind of surprises McVay might have in store for him. And in another way, he's not really coaching against McVay. He's coaching against Chris Shula. That is the guy he has got to defeat Monday night because it's Kevin KOC's the guy calling the offensive plays, and Shula's the guy that's calling the defensive plays. It's Flores that's got to deal with Sean McVay and what he's doing on offense. So a little bit, but I feel that Kevin O'Connell, the way he's handled this team this year and the way he's had this team prepared, they are not, again, putting up a stinker 2 weeks in a row. They are going to be ready to play. They're going to play very well, and they're going to beat Sean McVay and the Rams in Glendale.
And which I think is going to be more towards our home field advantage than theirs. But we'll see.
And yeah, we get a good start. We get a good start. Those Viking fans in purple will be very loud and noticeable.
Yes, and there's tons of them snowbirding down there in Arizona. Yep. Absolutely tons of them. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting. Sean had an interesting idea that if we trade KOC, keep B-Flow and make him the head coach.
Well, I think that would be kind of a slam dunk pivot from that for sure.
Yes, it would.
Dave, I think we know that is not going to happen. KOC getting traded, that is.
Right. It would be ballsy by the Wilfs if that was the case.
Oh, yeah, damn ballsy, and leaving yourself open to a ton of criticism. Or if it works out, what a brilliant move! But yeah, lots of risk and reward there.
Yeah,
is that Big Rail Dad down there?
Did he make it delicious?
Oh, okay. Didn't see Big Rail.
I love
today.
His avatar. I haven't seen Biggs today.
Well, I'm gonna say if he shows up, I was gonna call him out today because on the post-game show Monday night, he made a couple of comments how the Vikings have no chance of beating the Rams. So when the Vikings beat the Rams Monday night, I'm expecting Big Rail Dad to fess up just like I did last week on this show about my Sam Darnold ain't going to be the answer in 2024. So Big Rail Dad, you've been put on notice, buddy. Vikings win. You're going to be eating some humble pie. You better fess up.
And Bukalicious, to answer your question, yes, that is a signed, framed Jimmy Klein saucer print. I watched Jimmy play at UND when I was stationed up at Grand Forks. And then, of course, all through his time in Minnesota, he is by far my favorite player in the history of the team, amongst many, but by far my favorite. So I met him once.
That's saying something. Considering the amount of great players the Vikings have had while you've been cheering for them, Dave.
There's a ton, but we shall see. Anyways, any last words there, buddy?
Well, pretty different situation for us, Dave. Last year at this time, we were getting into offseason, and I think we started our quarterback
draft by now.
Draft. We're talking about what the Vikings are going to do at quarterback. We're doing our offseason positional analysis on the quarterback situation. None of that happening this week, Dave. We're all playoffs, baby, and I couldn't be happier about it.
And hopefully that playoff run continues.
Indeed.
Past Monday night. But remember, Monday night, live at the 2-minute warning. I'll go live at the 2-minute warning or just before, and you guys can join me, and we can watch the 2 minutes together and react, and then we'll have Tyler and Darren hop on, and as well as probably Jonas from Germany. He will stay up for that game. That'll be 2 weeks in a row, which is funny because when it goes off, it's usually about 5:30, 6 in the morning for him, and so it's always fun. But
it is. Hopefully we'll all be in a good mood too.
Yes. What do we say, buddy?
We say SKOL Vikings, baby, and thanks everybody for watching and commenting. Really appreciate it.
Yes. SKOL Vikings. Let's win this game. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcast as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!